Thank you for singing that song. I had an inspiration. Was a Thursday that I said, "Boy, it'd be really great if I could have that song," because it's hard when you're putting together a service. You don't write the sermon until Friday or Saturday, so you got to try to. That's how it happens, right? So you have to know what I'm gonna. Anyway, inside baseball. So as you know, in November, we installed this new Tree of Life chalice, which replaced, I know, isn't it nice? I love this chalice. And we replaced and honored the beautiful chalice made by Rosemary Zwick in 1982. I do love this chalice, but it's like with anything new, it takes a little getting used to, like a new car where you have to figure out how to turn the lights on and the heat and what makes the wipers go and all that stuff. We've had to figure out how to manage this chalice. You might have noticed that there's been some smoke coming up from the flame, and a few of you expressed concern that smoke might damage this beautiful paper cutting behind us. And so some suggested getting smokeless oil, but we already use smokeless oil. That's what came with the chalice, and you can buy it at any hardware store. It was Lynn Kendall, thank you, Lynn, who suggested that we lower the wick to just like a little tiny bit, about a quarter inch or less. And that reduces the smoke, which also seems to reduce the amount of oil that gets consumed by the chalice, which is a good thing, since more than once the flame has gone out in the middle of a service. You may have been here when that happened, and it happened at a memorial service, which was mortifying. This chalice flame requires a little more attention than the previous one, but we're learning how to tend the flame. We know how to make sure that there is enough oil and the wick stays trimmed and soaked and burning. Lighting the chalice is merely a symbolic ritual. Our lives do not depend on the persistence of this flame, but symbols and rituals do matter. They are the language of our spirits. In this church and in our religious movement, there can be a false dichotomy between the secular and the sacred, between intellect and spirit, but these are integrated parts of the whole of our lives. Our everyday living is made sacred through our intention, our practice, and our love. We are here, as our mission states, to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are here to attend to our spiritual lives and, in so doing, heal the reality of our hurting world. Symbols like fire and oil connect us to the holy found in every aspect of our lives. Rituals connect us to who we are, to the earth, and to each other. They remind us of where we come from and point to where we hope to go. Hanukkah, which begins tonight, is steeped in ritual. It is a celebration of religious freedom to practice the rituals and to create sacred meaning out of the ordinary. The Jewish people fought for and won their right to worship one God in their temple, and in rededicating that temple, they experienced the miracle of the oil that lasted for 8 nights instead of just one. This may seem like a fairly modest miracle. But the eternal flame in the temple wasn't just about having enough light. It was about the enduring power and sustaining faith of their lives. The temple had been destroyed, and almost all of the oil which had been made sacred was spilled or defiled. All they could find was one small bottle with the seal of the high priest, enough to last one night. In the Hebrew Bible, Leviticus 24:2, God commands the people of Israel to bring you pure oil from beaten olives for the lamp, that a light may be kept burning regularly. And in Exodus chapter 40, verse 9, then you shall take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and all that is in it, so that it may become holy. The sacred oil for the temple ritual would have started as ordinary olive oil, pressed from the olive trees of Israel and used for many temporal reasons, for cooking and cosmetics, to heal and preserve, to heat and light homes, and also to consecrate and to bless. But only oil that had been made pure could be used to rededicate the temple. And the oil could only be made pure by those in a pure spiritual state. Because the Maccabees had been at war with the Syrian army, they were not considered pure in spirit. They needed 7 days to go through the spiritual process of becoming pure before they could make the oil sacred. It's not that it took 8 days to make olive oil. Olive oil can be pressed in a day. They needed the small amount of oil they found to last because it took 8 days for the soldiers to become spiritually renewed so that they could bless their temple and keep the eternal flame going. As Unitarian Universalists, we can identify with the struggle for religious freedom, the right to believe as we do and to live our values freely. Our chalice flame represents the light of truth and our commitment to freedom for all from religious persecution. The fire of the chalice reminds us that we need to attend to the source from which we draw inspiration as we strive to live our values, and to ask, how does our Unitarian Universalist faith sustain us, and how do we collectively sustain it? When we extinguish the chalice flame each Sunday, we share a reminder to carry the flame with us in our hearts throughout the week until we are together again. Our modern lives allow us to expect certain things to come automatically, without effort, without requiring much faith at all. We strike a match at any time, we turn on a light switch, and there is light. Some things call for a faith that needs some time to cultivate. Like those Maccabees who sought to rededicate the temple, we need time for spiritual care to tend the fires of our commitment to justice and freedom. Our mission requires intention to be made real, and it can't happen in isolation. The idea of spiritual purity may be a hard one for many of us to relate to. What would it mean for us as Unitarian Universalists to become spiritually pure? We'd have to unpack both of those words, spiritual and pure. I'm certain we couldn't arrive at an agreed upon definition of spirituality if we tried. And that is one of the beautiful things of our faith. We each get to define those things for ourselves within our covenantal community. In the book Spiritual Literacy by Frederick and Marianne Broussat, a thick tome of all things spiritual, a few pages are dedicated to defining spirituality, but I wasn't satisfied with any one definition I found there. Like religion, it may be impossible to define spirituality definitively, but maybe we know it when we experience it. Reverend Karen has a definition I like, and she gave me permission to share it with you. Her definition of spirituality is this: discovering and maintaining relationship with that which is life-giving and sustaining within and beyond the self. And here's one that I'm noodling around with: discovering and creating meaning in all aspects of our lives, remembering our oneness with all through attention to beauty, practicing compassion, cultivating joy, and dedicating ourselves to mutual empowerment. I'm sure that won't be my final answer. What I know is that we need one another to nurture our spirits. We need to pay attention. We need stillness. We need to recognize beauty. We need to cultivate connection. And we need to work together for a better world. By attending to these things, we are practicing spirituality. And we can do this while we're walking the dog or washing the dishes or listening to a friend or a foe, feeding the hungry or working for justice. Now, for the word pure, it may not work for you. I struggle with that one too. Ideas about purity have taken some really weird turns throughout history, and especially in religion. The Judeo-Christian texts are rich with all the ways people, places, and things are made impure. Read Leviticus sometimes. There's some really far-out notions there. Notions of impurity have and continue to be tools of patriarchy used to oppress women and people across the spectrum of gender. Rather than purity, then, perhaps we can consider spiritual renewal, or clarity, or strength. I'm not sure what the spiritual process was for the Maccabees to be made pure enough to sanctify the oil for the lamp, but I have ideas about what renews my spirit. Time with people I love, quiet, reading, painting, listening to music, dancing, praying, meditation. What renews your spirit? Individual spiritual renewal enables us to rededicate our lives to what has greater meaning, beyond ourselves and our own suffering. It matters that we, like the Maccabees, become spiritually renewed because we all have a profound impact on one another. Energy moves through us and between us and can transform us in both generative and depleting ways. Think about the hundreds of tiny moments in your daily life, the hundreds of small interactions you share. Can you imagine the ways that your brief encounters and connections in a day shape the moments that ripple out and co-create the moments, the days, the lifetimes of countless others? A positive interaction with the checkout person or a neighbor can lift the spirit of each of you just a bit and perhaps be carried on to the next encounter. If I can remember that in each moment, that I'm not alone in this vast universe, that my spirit is renewed and has an impact on the collective well-being of the world. I imagine that is why it was important for the temple bearers to purify their spirits before they made the oil that would anoint the temple. That energy, that goodwill, that love and grace would be felt by all those entering the temple. Blessed is the season which engages the whole world in a conspiracy of love, said essayist Hamilton Wright Mabie. It takes tremendous energy to tend to our spirits. It is our life's work. In whatever it is that you do with your life, you can infuse it with spiritual intention, which could simply mean paying attention, looking for beauty and joy, noticing suffering and striving to alleviate it, being aware of how each of our lives touches every other. The work of the world needs our attention, fortified by our renewed spirits. There is a higher purpose to our lives, bound in our connection to each other and all things. And we need one another to fulfill life's purpose, and we need one another to fulfill the mission of this church. When each of us is renewed, when we maintain our own inner flame, we are better equipped to tend the collective flame of life. When we tend to our spirits, we might be able to lift up another a bit, or take over for another when their energy flags, like migratory birds flying in V formation, each bird taking their turn at the point of the V, bracing against the headwinds and allowing others to draft. We all pitch in and take our turns when there is a higher purpose to contribute to. We all contribute to tending the fire in our own way. While I was writing this sermon, I learned about the fire tending practice of an online shamanic community between the winter solstice and the feast of the Epiphany on January 5th. This worldwide shared practice creates a sacred space for spiritual renewal for all. Individuals agree to keep an actual fire going so that spirits can join virtually and with intention to find whatever their spirits need in the coming year. How might the world be transformed if each of us knew there was a hearth fire of the Spirit to which we could always go when we needed to be restored? Author and citizen of the Potawatomi Nation, Robin Wall Kimmerer, in her glorious book, Braiding Sweetgrass, has a chapter called Shketagin, People of the Seventh Fire. In sharing this, I seek to honor the Potawatomi people whose lands we are on right now, lands also stolen from the Miami, the Peoria, and the Sioux people. Kimmerer explains that the name of the fire-keeping people comes from a fungus that grows on birch trees, black and gray with bronze and golden ribbons. This spongy fungus called Shketagin has remarkable properties, including the ability to hold heat and fire. It is a tinder fungus. The Potawatomi people use this fungus to start and keep their fires burning. They recognize it takes special care to create and tend a fire, to keep it from raging out of control, and to prevent it from being doused out when and where it is of use. The mission of this congregation is the spiritual source of power from which we draw energy. Our mission is the fire which needs tending, tinder, and fuel to be maintained. There are many ways to light the fire of our commitment, but only together with intention and love from a spiritual strength can we keep that fire going and use it for good. None of us can do it alone. We need each other, writes Kimmerer, to take a song, a word, a story, a tool, a ceremony, and put it in our bundles. Not for ourselves, but for the ones yet to be born, for all our relations. Collectively, we assemble from the wisdom of the past a vision for the future, a worldview shaped by mutual flourishing. End quote. We are a people dedicated to making the world better, more inclusive, more loving, and more peaceful. We are here to repair the world, to renew our faith in each other, to rededicate the temple of our humanity, and to restore the earth. Every single one of our values is in jeopardy right now, and it is hard to have faith in ourselves and our spiritual power. With the figurative and literal fires raging around the world, it is natural to want to urgently respond and put every fire out. We will burn out if we do not tend our fires and spirits with intention and love. Remembering we are not alone in the wide universe. My wish for you, my beloveds, is for all of us that we share in the practice of tending our spirits and the collective liberation of all beings. May we discover and create the sacred in the ordinary through our practice of wonder. And may we remember through our practice the oneness of all creation, and may our remembering rekindle our spirits. May it be so.